Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. I'm your host, 𝑤𝒐𝒐, with Miss Joy Langford joining us yet again. Welcome back, Joy.
Hey, glad to be here. This is my favorite time on a Wednesday is to hang out with Wendy.
Oh, I love it. And we welcome back Keith Malone. He is with RE+ Events. Welcome back, Keith.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And your title is the Director of Hydrogen, one of my favorite topics, one of Joy's favorite topics. We are hydrogen gals. So could you talk to us a little bit about your personal background? Because all the times we've spoken to you, I've kind of talked about your job, but not your background being in marketing and what led you down the path of hydrogen.
Actually, so I've been in hydrogen now for 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, how did you get into that? And I would basically tell them, pure dumb luck. I was, my background, I'm an LA native, third generation. My family's been here for over 100 years. I live in Northeast Los Angeles, which is where my great-grandparents' home is located. My grandparents' home, where my mom and dad were raised, where I went to college. I went to Occidental. I proudly describe myself as pathetically local. I say that with a great deal of pride. And so my background professionally, I started off in Latino politics here in Los Angeles in the 80s and 90s. You know, in the state legislature, when you could count on both hands the number of state legislators, both assembly members and state senators. I mean, today it's a completely different world, but that's where I started off and worked in really nonprofit land, HIV/AIDS. I worked for LA Care Health Plan as their first director of communications. I worked in native plants for a long time with the Theodore Payne Foundation for wildflowers and native plants.
Love that place. That is a great place.
I am a hardcore California native plant guy. I describe myself jokingly as a native plant zealot, but I throw seeds, not stones. But that said, I talk native plants better than I garden with them. But you know, I'm a bachelor gardener, as I like to say.
But I met Keith probably around 11 years ago when I was first starting off on the board of Young Professionals in Energy, and he just had like just a certain personality that just drew everybody in the room into the whole energy conversation. And fast forward to now, he is at the forefront of every environmental conversation that there is. He went from even electric vehicle promotion to hydrogen vehicle promotion to our, wait for it, the big announcement of ARCHES, which we are both, working heavily on. Myself as the Chief Community Benefits Officer, which we will be getting over $380 million out into the communities and job labor workforce. And Keith is just been driving it all the way from, behind the scenes, in front of the scenes. You can always depend on an email with, upfront information on how the hydrogen conversation is going. It's just going to be so great to work with him yet again on getting the word out and promotion, which he's great at doing.
Joy, you're one of the few folks in what I call the larger hydrogen stakeholder community that I have remained in touch with in so many different permutations. Just to back up even more, I got into hydrogen, like when I say pure damn luck, I was a victim of the Great Recession, and I wound up finding this job online through a friend. And the next thing you know, I'm working for the Hydrogen Fuel Cell Partnership, formerly the California Fuel Cell Partnership. And there was no expectation that I knew anybody in this realm. And the first day on the job, I was in downtown LA for a conference, and my colleagues were like, go out and walk the floor. That's how you learn. And I wound up meeting a friend from high school who was heavily involved in hydrogen, and it just kept happening. And so it's been this sort of, it really feels like my career, as haphazard as it looks, looking back, like it finally makes sense.
It's a destiny, right? It's getting into all forms of environmental, which is one of the things I hope people really get from environmental social justice and all of Wendy's episodes. It catches on. You might not know exactly what you're going to do when you get into environmental, but the network that you meet, you build those networks, you build those relationships, you stay on top of what all the new technologies and the new trends are in environmental, and there you have it.
And this job, they brought me in, and I finally figured out a way to say what it is that I do within RE Plus events. They brought me in as their words, their first subject matter expert, and they really am paid to talk a lot, read a lot, share a lot, and connect people a lot. And so, and it is damn fun. And I've been here now about just over 5 months. So it's great.
Which is why I kind of, we jumped into the hydrogen topic, but I do want to give people a little background of what RE Plus is, what that company does as a whole. If you could just give a brief synopsis of that.
So we produce, we are actually a for-profit company owned by two national associations, the Solar Energy Industries Association, SEIA, and the Smart Energy Power Alliance, SEPA. And we were created to help put on their shows, really solar power focus. We used to be, our big show used to be known as Solar Power International. Today it's known as RE Plus. It's the largest clean energy event in the Americas. This year, last month, we welcomed 40,000 people to our show in Las Vegas, breaking the record we had last year of 27,000 people in Anaheim. And next year, we return to Anaheim, and we're expecting even more people. And we really try on under one roof, bringing together solar, wind, microgrids, energy storage, and hydrogen.
Because we always talk about energy diversification is massively important because there is no one technology that's going to save the day. But the reason I invited Keith to come today was very much last minute of me emailing Keith saying, hey, the US government awarded $7 billion in hydrogen funding. And the state of California in itself is getting 1.2 billion of that. And talking about what hydrogen hubs are, what it means, what ARCHES is. So Keith was kind enough to be like, hey, I'll do this because it was extremely last minute. But Keith, could you tell people what ARCHES is, what the hydrogen hub is, what this means for this funding to actually be promoting hydrogen development?
So to back up a little bit, President Biden signed into law back in late 2021 a federal infrastructure bill, often known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, I think, or BIL. I'll just call it the Federal Infrastructure Bill. And in that, embedded in that, was $8 billion for hydrogen hubs. And it specified they were to fund at least 4 to 6 hubs. At one point, DOE said, we're going to fund $7 billion. We're going to hold back $1 billion, which has now become kind of a pool for demand side hydrogen use. And really what it was meant to do was these were meant to set up hubs across the country, kind of these sorts of large ecosystems of projects. And so what you've seen over the last year and a half are states banding together to apply for these funds along with private entities. And we originally saw 79 applicants. That was then whittled down to about 33, 32. And then last Friday, they announced 7 of them. And I'm going to try and get this right. We've got, off the top of my head, ARCHES in California. We have the Pacific Northwest, which is Oregon, Washington, and Montana. We have the High Velocity Hub down in Texas. We have the Midwest Hub with kind of Illinois as the epicenter of that group. You've got Heartland Hub, which is North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota. we have the Mid-Atlantic hub, and we have the Appalachian hub. I think I hit them all.
You got them all.
And there's some that we didn't see that I kind of wondered about. I mean, the Northeast hub, I think everyone was a little shocked because it was New York, New Jersey. You know, that's not an insignificant geography here in the US. And so I think we're still going to be waiting to hear probably what may have or may have not happened for them not to get it. The Southeast hub, I was a little surprised. Senator Asa from Georgia, who spoke at RE Plus in September, was one of the real big leads on that. And in fact, in Georgia, he and another elected official established like the Georgia Hydrogen Brain Trust. And, you know, layered on top of that, you've got Hyundai, which is building big there in Georgia. So we're going to see, even though some of these programs, some of these areas, including Hawaii, didn't get funded, they're going to go ahead. They've already said, we're going to see it in one form or another. And you also have to remember, in addition to this funding for the hubs, well, let me just a little bit back up just a little bit, because you've got that $7 billion
There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot going on at once.
And their job is to, you know, build hydrogen production. But even more important is to synchronize that production with use. And so that $1 billion demand side component is critical to that. Now, with all of that there, we're still waiting to hear about the hydrogen production tax credit that the IRS is working on that came out of the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. And I've even had, you know, I had one esteemed colleague kind of quietly say, well, the hubs are important, but the production tax credit, some of these places may not need hub funding if they've got if that production tax credit is really good. I may have colleagues reach out to me and cuff me gently for saying that out loud, but altogether, that's going to be really, really important. And we're waiting for that. I think we're expecting it's going to come out between now and the end of the year. I don't think they want to release it in 2024. I suspect it's an election year. That's the last thing anybody wants, to have that kind of framed in that sort of milieu or whatever you want to call it. So we're still waiting, that one last piece of the puzzle. I'm leaning towards it's going to be good. I think industry is going to be happy. I know environmental groups really wanted, they call it the 3 pillars. It would be too complicated to go into it, but I think, I hope they're going to give us enough flexibility for industry and government really working together to really accelerate these projects.
And so you also have the main goal here is to get a hydrogen infrastructure throughout the United States, the same way as we have gas pipelines and fuel in every state that you go into, every micro community. The goal is to really promote, you know, clean transportation in underserved communities, new ways of doing trucks and port operations. And I know that's really exciting for Keith, because he's been talking about infrastructure from day one. Everything that he's been involved with at this point with hydrogen is, how do you put the pieces of the puzzle together? And to have 7 hubs at different parts of, you know, the United States and actually on this continent, it makes for an even larger puzzle that we have to try to put together.
Absolutely. And you've got, you know, each of the hubs really meant to kind of bring forward not projects that were unique to their area, and they have different strengths and different kind of focus, each one, you know, here in California. And a lot of them have already figured out that probably one of the easiest, I shouldn't say easiest, but comparatively speaking to other sectors, probably the sector that can be scaled fastest is going to be in the heavy duty hydrogen mobility realm, which really, at minimum, buses and trucks. I know here in California, it's not just buses and trucks. I will say Arches, one of their members, one of their partners is the Center for Transportation and the Environment. They're going to be leading a 1,000 bus project here in California, We just the other day saw that we've gone from 3 transit agencies in California pursuing fuel cell buses to now like 42, 43. And then, oh yeah, you know, they're pursuing mixed fleets, almost all of them, but in a way that we've never seen before. And so, but mobility becomes this really quick way to use that hydrogen that's going to be created.
Yeah.
And there's a recognition that mobility is going to be one of those ways we connect those hubs. Not all hydrogen is going to be moved by pipeline. Some of it's going to be by truck.
What about rail? I mean, I'm a huge rail fan,
yes.
and I think we definitely need our rail systems brought back.
So there was a recent announcement just in the last couple of days, Caltrans. So we already have a hydrogen train coming out to the San Bernardino County Transportation Agency. They've got a rail line they're developing. Stadler, the company, is delivering. They call their hydrogen train FLIRT, F-L-I-R-T. And Caltrans, about a year and a half ago, signed an MOU with them. Like, we're going to pursue purchase of 4 trains with up to 20 of them. And they just made the purchase of the 4 trains and reconfirmed they're going to purchase upwards of 20 of them over the next couple of years. And so they're going to be sucking up a lot of hydrogen. So California, we're going to be able to make a lot, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to be importing a lot too. And I think other hub efforts like Pacific Northwest are looking at us like they're going to need some. I mean, we're 40 million people?
Yeah.
You know, so it's going to be interesting to watch all of this. But I also will add, you've got the Arches hub designation, the Pacific Northwest hub designation, and you've got in British Columbia, you've got a hub effort emerging out of, I think, the Prince George area. And I know DOE probably had a lot of boxes to check off and all of that, but, you know, Japan is out there securing agreements for hydrogen imports. You know, they've already gone along with South Korea and Singapore down to Australia, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're looking to the North American West Coast for some additional hydrogen resources. It really remains to be seen as we move forward, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was that consideration among many others when they chose these various hubs.
Question though.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, when Joy and I first interviewed you, probably now going back 2 years, maybe even 3, I received a bunch of very angry emails from people saying how hydrogen is terrible and it's electric all the way. And I know Joy remembers because I called her perplexed, because I honestly believe we need many energy diversification. We need many options. So when people say that hydrogen's inefficient, electric's the only way to go. But then if you bring up the fact that electric batteries have some conflicted materials, you know, lithium is running low, cobalt is a problem. But then again, hydrogen fuel cells aren't perfect either. What's the best way, and Joy, this is probably more your wheelhouse as well, is communicating to everyone we need all forms of energy to be considered equally. We need to understand the fact that electric isn't the only answer, that everyone's going to have materials that might be in low supply or problematic, but this is just moving the needle forward to our renewable energy goals. It needs to happen. We have to do this.
And what I was going to ask, basically along those same lines, is, you know, the whole argument about what is clean hydrogen, what's green hydrogen as opposed to gray. And we all know that, you know, in California, we want to be at the forefront of green hydrogen.
Yeah.
Which is
really
just
so people understand. With the color coding, green hydrogen means like solar or wind. Then we've got pink, which I think is methane. And then there's turquoise. God only knows what that is. There's, no, is pink nuclear? I think pink is nuclear. And then blue is methane. Black is coal.
I think a lot of us are trying to stay away from the colors and really focus on carbon intensity because the colors kind of force us into pigeonholing things. And there's so much happening right now with the technology. There's a lot to unpack in that question, and I'd like to start off with just the efficiency argument. I have a colleague, Matthew Klippenstein out of Canada. I think he's a thought leader on this, where he talks about some people preach the gospel of efficiency to an illogical conclusion. And the one thing I like to point out, transit buses are the canaries in the coal mine. But all zero emission buses, because they are really, first off, transit agencies tend to be the early adopters, not only for new technology, but also when it comes to fleets and scaling up. And what we're seeing right now is a growing recognition. And let me really quickly state, transit agencies, in an interesting way, are very conservative. They have to move people every day without delay. And they do not want to hear, fanciful arguments like what is working and what's happening on the ground. And they're discovering that both technologies have their benefits and work in different ways, and they are complementary. And if you talk to a lot of people in hydrogen mobility, they see the value in both. I mean, hell, I apologize. When I say the word hell in my head, I'm spelling it H2ELL. So it's more of a professional term. But that said, but what they're discovering is that, many initially said, we want battery electric buses. They're cheap. Buses are cheap. The charging infrastructure is cheap. And the state of California requires that they all develop rollout plans. And as they began to plan for a full rollout of the technology, they started to see there are challenges as you scale up. And both pathways have their challenges, but you started to see them pursue more mixed fleets. And this is also in addition to the experience of agencies like Sunline Transit out in Coachella Valley, AC Transit in the Bay Area. Big study coming out there that Stanford's doing right now that you need to save for another day, but you also have Orange County Transportation Authority. And increasingly here in Los Angeles County, we have Foothill Transit in the San Gabriel Valley. They just made an announcement a couple of years ago of purchasing 33 buses. They this year announced they're buying 19 more from ENC, formerly Eldorado National, which is based in Riverside County, out in Jurupa Valley. So,
cool.
So there are a combination of factors. That's why we've gone from 3 agencies pursuing fuel cell technology, among other technologies, to now 42 or 43. So, but they are the canaries in the coal mine. And so when people tell me about drivetrain efficiency, I also remind them that there are other factors, including total cost of ownership, utility or what works, productivity, and lastly, resiliency. It always strikes me that this sort of obsessive focus on efficiency, but especially certain kinds of efficiency, and the whole electrify everything strikes me as a strategy of let's put all of our eggs in one basket. And I thought we had learned our lesson from petroleum.
Oh, if only we could learn our lessons, Keith.
I know, but so you have that going on there, and people use the efficiency argument for renewable hydrogen production, and I remind them that solar and wind, the sun and the wind, come back the next day. And I also want to remind them it always feels like the criticisms of hydrogen, especially when using the efficiency argument, it often feels like we're held to the past, and that somehow all of these technologies will never improve. Like somehow they get shoved into this parallel universe, because a lot of our battery electric siblings often talk about the future and battery performance will improve over time. Guess what? We exist in that same universe. So does solar and wind technologies, geothermal, and more.
Think about what electric vehicle batteries were even 10 years ago. Not great.
Yep.
Actually, Joy was one of the first people. When did you get your first electric car, Joy? How long ago was it?
2015.
So yeah, you were at the very beginning, and you went through the growing pains, but you kept with it. You fought with it. Keith, you had the first Mirai, or what? The second generation Mirai?
So I've been driving a fuel cell car full time since 2013. So I
Oh,
started off with a Toyota demonstration vehicle where they took Highlander shells and developed these vehicles. And I named her Samantha. She was great. And then I've had every other car. I've driven every other car since then. The Hyundai Tucson, the Honda Clarity, the first gen Toyota Mirai. I am now driving a second generation Toyota Mirai. He's gray. I've named him Sharky because a colleague of mine, his kids have already named their gray Mirai the Shark, and I felt out of respect to the 5-year-old and 7-year-old that I shouldn't steal the name.
no.
Sharky.
No.
So I drive
Sharky.
Sharky.
I like Sharky. Sharky's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Joy, I actually want you to pick up where he left off is the communication when someone says only electric, I'm, how do you explain to people, listen, we need both. We need everything.
Well, look, change is really hard for people, right? We all know that. And massive change, infrastructure change is very hard for people to kind of digest. You're thinking about jobs. Not only what does it mean to you to drive an electrical or a hydrogen vehicle, but what does it mean to your job force? What does it mean to the way you get your food at the grocery store?
Yeah.
One of the good examples that I like that's kind of current, that doesn't have anything to do with electricity, is this whole Ozempic phase. And by no means am I telling anybody to get on Ozempic or anything like that. But Walmart just did a study and their grocery sales are down nationally due to the fact that people are on Ozempic. So naturally, a big firm like Walmart or any of the other, grocery stores, likes this idea of, people losing weight and eating less. But we all know that that's good for the health of us all, correct? With everything, with people not being sick, being able to come to work, being able to, do different things and in a different way.
Yes.
So, ways of getting clean transportation are similar, right? We're just changing our direction, but all in a good manner. And it's scary sometimes. It's scary to environmental groups. It's scary to people who live in these underserved areas that might have to try to find other ways for their generation as well as the younger generations to have jobs. So if we get out of the scariness and the unknown and we're actually training people on all of the alternatives, that's the goal here, especially with Arches and what the community benefits team that we're putting together is all about.
Joy, I really think you have one of the most critical roles. And given that we are California, I jokingly tell people that California is the down payment on everybody else's clean air.
Right. We're largest economy. Yeah.
And, I often, one time I was thinking about it because I often joke when it comes to hydrogen, California will launch the model and damn it, Texas will prove it. Although I have evolved that argument now to say that if both California and Texas can make hydrogen work, game over. We're good to go. And, but I also realized something as a native Californian, because Texans are like, don't mess with Texas. And we really don't have that kind of an attitude here in California. I was trying to think of where do we get, aside just we live in Los Angeles and the industry is here and well, we know what comes with that. But one day it dawned on me that we don't get arrogant about much in California, except when it comes to clean tech and green tech. But it's this quiet sort of like, oh, yes, we're the leaders. Like we have the data shows it. We're the leaders. Most of the venture capital funding is coming into California because the state and others are investing in co-investing, I should say. It's, we have every right to be like, yes, of course. But I don't think we really, but it doesn't rise to the occasion of don't mess with Texas. It's a different sort of pride, if you will.
It's pride, but we play nice with people. We always want to help. That's just something, you know, I've learned. I'm from the East Coast. I moved out here. And one of the first things I learned about Californians, their nature is they do want to help. And it's like, we have a solution. We're going to help you learn that as well. Okay.
Okay, I'm telling you, we've got our jobs cut out for us as far as getting the word out, making sure and ensuring, which the DOE is going to be wonderful at, ensuring that the community benefits are there and that they are real, getting clean transportation, zero emission vehicles, and of course, you putting on events and helping us spread the word through interactive, fun, family-filled events that let generations know. It's generational at this point of how to make hydrogen and clean fuels work for us all.
You know, I think education is going to be a critical element. I've been, since the hub effort started, I've been a grumpy old man about this, saying that we really need to invest in a solid national hydrogen education campaign that each hub effort's going to do slightly different kind of work based on what their needs are. But I think there are some key things that can be shared, like developing a strong K through community college curriculum or curricula. Indeed. That to me is absolutely critical. Cool. Just because a lot of times when you come into communities and if they don't understand hydrogen, it feels like a Simpsons episode where they bring out the pitchforks and the torches. You know, and when they understand hydrogen is 14 times lighter than air, you know, when they understand, you know, safety issues and whatnot, because, you know, electricity, gasoline, propane, natural gas, all have their safety issues, but making sure they understand that. And in particular, making sure they understand, I mean, a lot of times for me to educate folks out in public, I tell them first, a lot of firefighters have been trained. They're good to go. Yeah. They understand the properties. They understand you respect the fuel. It is flammable, just like a lot of other things, and it has different properties, and we need to just be prepared for that. But usually I find once they understand that part, then the window opens up and we can have a really fun educational session. But Joy, you gave me an idea. I'll tell you about it later. But yeah, I think education is absolutely critical here. And I think there are just some basic things that we haven't done in quite a long time. And so that's going to be fun to watch. That's where I think it's going to get, we're going to have the moment of creativity, I think, really in the education. I mean, hydrogen is just, you know, it's fun, but, you know.
We've been hydrogen fans for ages. I mean, even with people, you know, trying to tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, or I simply don't understand. Those are my favorites. You just don't understand. I'm like, I think I do. But,
I love being mansplained. I'd estimate I've had it done about 50 to 75 times in 11 years. So as a lousy feminist, I've always believed my women friends and family members and others when they've been mansplained. But I didn't realize that was what was happening to me. Although I now call it nerdy mansplaining. And I'm
we've
sorry.
Heard it all. We heard it all. As Joy said, change is hard, and the only constant in life is change. So let's think of it that way. But we do need to adapt. We do need all forms of energy. So Keith, how can people locate you? Maybe connect with you at RE Plus events, and get to know more about hydrogen in general.
Well, I would say this. I can be found on LinkedIn. I'm easily found. I also produce a couple different emails that I push out on an irregular basis, news clips. I do what no one seems to be doing. I actually read the stories. So it's not just a link and a headline and a first paragraph, but I try and pull out excerpts that I think are interesting. I mean, sometimes you'll see in my news distribution a story you've seen before, but I included it because there's something different about this story. There's some little gem that's in there. So I have a general news distribution. I do one on hydrogen hubs. I have smaller ones for colleagues in transit, aviation, rail.
Wow.
They're small ones. They're just small distributions, but because sometimes not everyone needs to see every hydrogen rail story that's out there. Although hydrogen rail's starting to get real interesting here and in Europe. It's really, and marine
we just need to catch up in the US. Oh, and marine too. Yeah.
I should say the rest of the US needs to catch up with California. Sorry, there's just way too much happening here.
So, oh, I know. No, no, there's a lot that needs to happen. There's a lot that we need to cut through some red tape, which is what you guys are working on, is getting these things up and running and out. So on that, guys, please reach out to Keith Malone, RE+ Events. You can find him on LinkedIn pretty easily. You can also go to the RE+ Events website. And also Joy Langford. Check out Joy's page. She is very active in this as well with the education, communication outreach. And just learn more about this, because these are necessary technologies if we are going to have a cleaner, happier, greener environment. And on that,
just one last special thanks to Keith and all of the people who really worked hard, from the legislature to the UC system to everybody that was involved in Arches, that worked hard to bring this $1.2 billion home to California. If it wasn't so early, I'd be toasting with Keith right now, early in the morning. But we'll have a lot to let the ESJ community know about in the future weeks. So
we look forward to it. So on that, guys, I am your host, Wendy Nystrom, with Environmental Social Justice, my co-host, Joy Langford. And again, Keith Malone, thank you so much for your time today. You are a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
Bye, everyone.